Hey everybody, it's Tuesday.
And welcome to this week's edition of Hook, Line, and Striker.
I'm Josh.
And I'm Emily. And thanks for being here with us this evening.
Yeah, so we don't really have too much planned. We'll give you a little bit of an update on what we've been up to and why, you've been seeing just a lot of us in short little clips. Where we went on vacation last week, why we didn't have a show. And then, maybe we'll get to talk with some of you guys. Hopefully you got some questions for us.
So yeah, that's true. If you do have questions, definitely get that into that comment box because we are here to chat about what you're chatting about. And if you don't have questions, then give us a fishing report because gosh, we love hearing where you're from or what you're fishing for or how it's going.
Mm-hmm.
With that, we do love to bring you guests. And the funny thing is this time of the year, everybody seems to be out guiding.
Guiding and busy.
But the good thing about that is that means that people are getting out fishing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, people are booking trips with all kinds of guides. All of our guides that are on the Striker staff, they are very busy, and it's hard to even get a phone call conversation with them, let alone get them on a podcast. But no, that's great. It's great that everybody's out fishing, more than just the free weekends, and they're hiring people that do it for a living, which is great because it's not only about catching the fish, because these people certainly can catch fish, but it's about them being able to share their knowledge with you so you can apply it going forward.
And with the holiday weekend coming up, I imagine that quite a few people will be out on the water. So, always a great time to, I was going to say be extra safe. You always want to be safe and keep a lookout and all of that when you're on the water. But holidays are weekends where people tend to, be renting boats or be out on the water where they're not normally or whatever. So, just kind of keep in mind that if you are one of those people, like we're on the river all the time and we know there's people that don't go to the river all the time. So maybe it's a weekend to go to your least traveled spot.
Yeah, I was just thinking we might troll some crappies this weekend, and then I was just thinking, oh man, it's 4th of July. It's gonna be busy.
But the crazy thing about that is we are getting to a point in the season where fish are really starting to set up into summer patterns.
Yeah, especially down by us. I mean, I think I'll call it. I think they are in summer patterns. Most of the spawning is done as far as crappies and walleyes and what have you. Pumpkin seeds are just getting on it. Bluegills are just a little bit ahead of them, but they're up there yet. You'll catch those shallow all summer long, but some of the bigger ones will start migrating deeper in about a couple weeks here, but there's still some big ones out deep. But there's plenty to be had shallow, but everything else I think is just plain old summer stuff.
Well, because the funny thing was, there had been, I don't know, it was a crazy spring. Do we maybe say that every year? But it is a little bit different every year. That's the thing, is to be able to keep up with where the water temperatures are at and what fish might be doing. But I think, we had some spikes and some dips in temperatures this year that made even following that, like, dizzying. And so, it was really interesting because there was a certain point by the end of last week where, we were out there and we found water temps like straight summer temps. Like this is what it's going to be. But the weeds were still catching up. And so even though the water temps were saying one thing, summer pattern, fish were maybe still kind of moving towards that direction.
Yeah, I mean, I think so. Where Emily's talking about, we were up in Hayward on the Chippewa Flowage, kind of the north central part of the lake. And when you fish the Chippewa Flowage, you have miles and miles of boating that you can do. And Emily and I decided this year that we were going to focus on that north central part. It's Muskie Bay. There's a couple other lobes up there, but in that general area, and we kind of figured out that we're gonna fish up there because one thing, if you've never been to the Chippewa Flowage, is that there's a lot of fishy structure, like the whole thing, and it's not only is it a lake, it's a reservoir, but it fishes like a river, and so it can be quite difficult. And you were talking about fish setting up in summer patterns, and they certainly do that on that lake. But when we went out there, weeds where they would be up to the top or almost in 8 feet were only 5 foot tall. So you had 3 feet of water above it. Fish were everywhere. There was fish still spawning. There was fish out over like 20-foot deep structure, and it was target fish. You know, we went out there with the AquaView and we saw the bluegills and the crappies that we were after, and those deep fish were not hungry. And we went up shallow, and there you'd pick one or two up, but it wasn't that summertime like hammer. You know, you weren't going and you weren't hitting going by. And for us, you know, we troll twisties or we troll paddle tails, and you don't come up to a spot and go, oh, we're going to hit one here and hit one, come back around the loop and then hit that spot again. No, this was totally random.
So we will keep talking about that in a second. Carla, while you are here, I will answer your question. She's asking when I'm going by Tim Oberfeld. So for anybody that doesn't know the Oberfelds, they are the Widowmaker Lures people. So honestly, great products. We see them all the time at the shows and expos. They have a fabulous website, so go and check that out. But I think not this weekend, but the weekend after.
Yeah,
or something like that.
Yeah, I think the weekend of the 15th is when we're planning on heading down to Iowa and that fish the Mississippi for the first time for panfish. So that'll be fun, or whatever. You know, Tim and Brian are really good on that body of water, especially those, you know, the lower pools. And yeah, I'm pretty excited to get out there.
But the funny thing about that system is it is the river, like you're saying, Mississippi probably. And we were just talking about the Chippewa flowage, which is also a flowage system. And so the thing about that, though, I mean, I guess it's hard to generalize fish across the board, but when you have that river system, that flowage, you tend to get a thicker fish. And so whether you are catching like the biggest fish ever, you know, people usually are referring to length at that point. The greatest thing about being on a flowage is that you get to catch fish that like have shoulders, you know, they are just thick. And so if you're out for a fish fry or just catch and release and throwing them back for a good fight, that is something that we were able to find.
Yeah, I mean, we put together, well, first thing that you didn't touch on is all of the sought after, you know, quote unquote game species. You know, it's listed on one of the better maps for the Chippewa flowage. We got almost every species in that lake except for a muskie and a pumpkin seed, and we saw a pumpkin seed. So yeah, I almost count that one. But no, we caught almost everything. You know, fish were scattered. They were all eating very similar things at that point, and it was, yeah, it took us 4 days to put together a fish fry.
But we have, I'm not saying a fish fry for two of us. We have
this was
people. Like what?
Yeah, it was 2.5 ice cream pails full of fish, you know, that we had fillets, you know, finished fillets that we had to put together. But I mean, you know, sometimes it takes a little bit, and we put together a good mixed bag. There was perch in there. There was walleyes in there. There was crappies in there, a bluegill. So I mean, it was a good mix of fish, and it was a challenging week of fishing, but it was really fun.
But I think, you know, you're talking challenging week. I think that's, you know, a little bit, first of all, the body of water, because if you're not familiar with the Chippewa flowage, one thing about it is it has every little like nook and cranny and bay and island and everything that you can, like, you'll pull up somewhere and be like, fish have got to be here. This is the perfect spot. It has everything, wood in the water. There's sand, there's rocks, there's dirt just off of it. You know, fish can be here, there, deep, shallow. But then you get to the next bay and it's the same thing, but all different versions. Like everywhere that you go in the Chippewa flowage is like somehow perfect fish habitat. But you know, that I think between that and the fact that when we were there, it was that transition between that spring spawn and that summer pattern, and water temps were up and down. And so between all of those things, I mean, it was a little bit of a tough season to be there fishing.
Yeah, and you know, we had those up and down temperatures, but then there's another phenomenon in that lake where the east side is very like tannic, so it's a very coffee colored water where like the light really gets absorbed, and those fish tend to stay a little bit shallower because of that. But then you move, the further west you go, the clearer the water normally gets. And this year, because when that week that we were up there, We had some pretty crazy storms up there,
Like,
and
just before we got
everything, like, pretty good amount of rain, and the whole thing just like went muddy. And it's not like chocolate milk, like we're not saying like that, but it really just like the water got stained up. And what was really interesting was that when you get that stained up water,
Hey, Eric.
what people forget to try, because automatically, especially with crappies and bluegills, you think like chartreuse, like daytime bright skies, chartreuse. Not always the case, and we found that black was actually the best color that week. Sometimes purple, until you got into the evening, like when that sun started to go down, and then you could switch over to that chartreuse or the whites, and then that started doing better than the darker colors. But during the day, it was really weird. Bright high skies, purple and black, hands down, was a good color.
Carla's asking if we travel with our own boat. I would say 90% of the time, yes.
Mm-hmm.
You had specifically asked about going down to Iowa, and I think that's like our 1 in a million trip that we're not actually planning on bringing our own boat, which is going to be super crazy. But that is the thing about. Well, I don't know about being a crazy angler. Like, what else because we want to have like one of everything with us. Like, we talk to guests all the time, guys that are in different tournament situations. Didn't we just talk to even Darren about this? And he was talking about having to bring just what he could carry onto a partner's boat. I would be terrible at that.
Well, I guess we'll see when we go visit Tim.
No.
We get to be in Tim's boat, actually, so it'll be really fun.
And I mean, I guess we have some really great cases, to organize things into it. It will be possible, but I mean, every time I leave one thing at home, I'll never need this. It's literally the one thing that I need. Just every time it happens to me, it cracks me up.
All right. So Justin, our buddy over here by Green Bay, well, I was thinking about going there, but with the holiday weekend, I'm having second thoughts. So it might still end up being there. It's early enough in the season. I have some Aquaview stuff that I want to do.
The thing we're talking about this lake, it gets green.
Yeah,
like
Justin,
slimy,
that lake,
like weeds, like
so it might still be early enough because it hasn't been super hot. And we haven't had a whole lot of rain, so it might still be clear enough to do that. It was on my list though, because I love trolling that lake. That's a great lake to troll. Jeff, I would probably venture to say northern Canada. Right?
Like one of the north or south poles.
Well,
I don't know how far I literally don't know.
Judging by our buddy up in Winnipeg. It might still be on Lake Winnipeg. They had over 5 feet of ice.
Yeah, he was using like so many extensions. It is always this time of the season though. Normally it's when we've had a bunch of humid days in a row, and I don't want to jinx it, but it's not been so bad, But ice season, it is the time of the year where people really start thinking about that, because that heat, it just like, I love the boat. Honestly, I love the boat. But there is nothing better than sitting out in an ice shack on the ice.
Well, and what's it been? April, May, June. We're into July. That's 4 months. So it might be a good time to take a look at your auger batteries. If you run electric augers, it might be a good time to look at your Vexilar, your flasher batteries and stuff, your electronics, because just to see where they're at, if they're a little low, because you want to store that lithium stuff at 50%, and it should be good, but it doesn't hurt to check it. And then that lead acid stuff, it's still great technology, still powers your stuff just a little bit on the heavy side, doesn't make it bad, it still works great, but that does do well with a charging halfway through the summer. So, might be that time of the year to if you're getting the itch for ice fishing, go put that stuff on the charger.
Well, and the other thing is, a lot of people these days have different systems of, taking their spots from open water to ice. And so if this is the point in the year where you are thinking about ice fishing, then make sure to get your boat out there and go and find like cribs or deep structure or points or mud flats versus sand, like find different transition areas, whatever your graph is able to tell you at this time of the year, because I think it's a little bit easier to be able to look around when you're scooting out in the boat, but when you can take those spots and transition them then to ice season, that is going to help you be more successful.
Yeah. And even if you're not out there fishing, especially this weekend, 4th of July, if you're out on a buddy's boat, you guys are going to go hit a sandbar or whatever, mark the sandbar just with your phone. So then at least you know where the sandbar is and you can go, which direction to go off of. Because even sandbars in the wintertime, as long as they're not frozen all the way down, that can be some good fishing. So just, take the opportunity while the water is easy to traverse. And if you have the option of a boat, take the opportunity and just mark some spots down for the wintertime because it does help. I go back on my stuff all the time.
The other thing that sounds crazy, because we're talking about, referencing even a lake, it gets so scummy, so green, so weedy. Obviously you sometimes show up to launch, you cannot miss the weeds, that's for sure. But I mean, also as an angler, when you are out there, take note of what kinds of weeds are where. Even if you don't know what it is, you don't know a name, you don't need any of that. Just know kind of what the different types of weeds are in the lakes that you fish, because then you can use those trends later on in ice season. So first of all, when you're looking for, they always say, look for green weeds because that's a lot harder to find in winter. That sounds dumb to say, but this is the time of the year to be looking for that. If you can find a trend in what weeds seem to stay alive, and then you can find those weed patches in open water, that right there is a huge advantage. The other thing is if you are in a place where maybe the water is really dark, or, sometimes we'll fish the backwaters of the Wolf, and, finding weeds on a river system can be honestly quite a bit harder. So when you're out there, take note of where all that is so you can reference that later.
Yep. And even something as simple as marking a weed edge, just like marking a sandbar. If you're you're in the boat and you're coming over a weed edge, just hit mark in your Navionics or something. Even if you're not driving the boat, it just needs to be close, right? So then when you come out, when you walk out for ice fishing, if you don't have a boat, ice fishing is your way to fish a whole lake. Then at least you know where a weed edge was, and for the most part during the winter time it will be, and then you can use that to fish, and set your day up for success. Ray is spooling all the poles from the youth ice fishing. That's awesome.
Yeah, that does sound fun.
I should spool some poles.
We are not going to be able to do that. We are in the process of moving. So this whole background is going to change at some point. I don't even know what it's going to look like yet. If you have suggestions for that, let us know.
Yeah.
I always consider getting a green screen so we could change it every week.
We have one.
I don't know. Maybe we need a lake background.
That's too distracting.
Who knows? Who knows? Oh my gosh. So, we were on vacation last week, so we were talking a little bit about the Chippewa flowage. I think we're going to get to talk a little bit more about that next week because we do have a guest coming up, Matt Rowan. Mm-hmm. He has Big Fish Encounters guide service, and gosh, I wish I remembered in Chippewa Falls what his awesome store is called.
I can try and pull it up.
But he is going to be here with us, and so I'm sure that we will get to chat with him a little bit about how fishing has been in that area. And before we went, we were able to talk about kind of some very specific situations of bog fishing, because those floating bogs is just a feature that not everyone ever gets to experience. So with that, that's something that we kind of love talking about, and we had a unique experience this past week, and I'll share that with you in a minute. But did you find the name of the store? Oh yeah, it's called Big Fish Encounters Marine and Electronics. Look at that. Marine
Electronics and Installs.
Oh yeah, that's the hard part.
Yeah. So that's cool.
Hey, if you've been there, go leave a review. He's already got 9 and it's 5-star. So it's actually awesome. I'm interested in this is, I mean, I can't say it's like that new because now he set it up like a while ago. We'll hear all about that. But when you can find like an electronics dealer that knows their stuff and can install it, I mean, that is awesome. So I can't wait to hear about that.
Mm-hmm.
But I was saying, bog fishing, we might get to talk about that as well. And so we had a very specific situation happen where we actually found like a little tiny bog and we were fishing it. And then the next day we came back and it had moved.
Yeah, we had some pretty big storms, like we said earlier, and yeah, that bog is bouncing around back there in that bay. I think it moves more than we know, just because we only have the instance of the week. But yeah, it moved around and it was pretty crazy, actually.
But the thing that was crazy about it is because when we had kind of stumbled upon it, I'm talking these like little tiny pieces of bog. Like why did we even stop? Like who knows, But we had found a spot where it like curls in, almost makes like a little bay in itself of just bog, and then there was a log like right in the middle, and it was cool because we like trolled along really slow, and we actually were casting bobbers and just kind of like hopping them back to us a little bit, giving it some action, and we found some really great fish that way. Happened to cast up right by this log and caught like, well, actually it was funny because you caught a smallie, and it was honestly like, I'm not ripping on a fish, but it was like a pretty small smallie. But I also happened to get lucky and I caught the bluegill. But for reference, this bluegill was literally the same size as the smallie.
Yeah.
And so that was like super exciting, to catch. I mean, I didn't even honestly measure it, but it was maybe 9 or 10 inches. It was, but it was a great fish and it was a great fight. It was a really funny picture, I guess.
Yeah.
We'll try to post that in the comments at some point. But that was the thing, is we got really excited then, we'd caught other fish there as well, oh, we're going to go back. We'll try that again, drift by it or whatever. And we showed up the next day and we were going to, fish a similar pattern, and it didn't exist in the way that it had the day before. So we fished it and nothing happened. It was amazing.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, that bog fishing is as close to ice fishing as you can get in the summertime. It's actually pretty fun.
It is crazy though how they just move around. So you just never know what's going to happen. You just have to adjust.
Mm-hmm. Well, speaking of adjusting, so then the resort changed our days from a Saturday to Saturday to a Friday to Friday, and so we ended up fishing till Thursday, and then we came home Friday morning, and we took our time coming back, and we got home Friday afternoon, got our stuff put away, and we were able to have almost a whole weekend full of fishing again. And we got out on the Wolf River by our house, and man, what a difference as far as like fish activity. I would say, it was, bright colors and hungry fish, and you were having a little bit of a tough time, and for no reason other than whatever, but we put, between the two of us, we put quite a few fish in the boat, and yeah, it was really fun to put some crappies with some shoulders in the boat. And a nice dogfish too.
Well, it was actually really interesting because there was a lot of like fish action jumping on the water. Like there was just constantly stuff going on. But I think the bowfin, I don't know, they were up to something else because we did catch a few, but honestly, with how much jumping was going on, I thought we'd catch a whole bunch more. I know some people out there, you guys hate them. I don't hate them. I don't, but I just, when I'm light tackle, like pan fishing, it's like, it's a lot to deal with.
I do like those bowfin. They're very cool creatures. I think they just started their spawn either while we were gone or even just that weekend. As it goes on, we'll start getting some post spawn bite, and we'll probably end up catching a few more while we're fishing for crappies. But yeah, the crappies were definitely hanging out on the structure in the backwaters. We haven't tried any of the main river fish yet, but the fishing is so good in the backwaters right now. It's hard to go experiment.
Well, and there is a ton of bait back there. And so, I can't necessarily call it easy fishing either, because the fish
No.
have a ton of forage to choose from. And so I think, that's part of why, we were talking about the bowfin. I think that they're right on in there with the crappies, with, whatever's eating that is what is going to be there. Because as we are moving around, I mean, like I'm saying, the minnows are there in huge masses. I mean, in the Wolf River system, we just happen to see that all the time. And that's a great thing. That's what keeps that system what it is. But then on top of that, you have bug hatches going on. There's dragonflies everywhere. There's just kind of one of everything going on. So that was actually kind of crazy.
Yeah. One thing I will say, if you're running the Wolf River this weekend for the holiday, and it just started raining, so this might change, but we were a couple feet low on the river level, and so that coupled with that pretty big storm system we had just in the New London area, and then and that region. Just be careful when you're going up and down the river. There's a lot of new snags that we encountered. We bumped our prop off of one, so I got to go bang a dent out of our prop. But you just have to be careful when you're out there, because unless you're out there a lot, we're out there weekly almost. That stuff can sneak up on you. So just be careful, and especially running those big fast boats. You don't want to put a log through the front of it and send people over the top.
Yeah, that would. I like hesitate because I'm like, oh my gosh, people do take such huge. Well, and it's not even like the speedy boats that I'm worried about. It's like the houseboats. Like, people take some big boats through there. It's like crazy. Just like a little river. I guess it's not that little, but that's just how I feel. I guess that's. But there is a lot of new wood that is down. There's a lot of trees that are right along the river, and we had some big weather just. Was it 2 weeks ago now almost? And, it's really interesting because take note of where that is, because some of those are about to be like really great fishing holes also.
Yeah, for sure.
Cool. So I guess I'm trying to think of other things that we have going on coming up here. And we did talk about going to fish in Iowa, and we talked about kind of fishing around here. Other than that, I think we usually take a trip way up north, but I don't think we have a trip like that this year until ice season.
Yep. Yeah, we booked the rest of our summer with other stuff, so
but it's going to be actually really great because look at your face. It's going to be really great because we're going to be out like learning new waters. And so, we talk all the time here about the Wolf River system and all of this. And although we are definitely still going to go back and visit, because how could we not? I think it brings up a bunch of great new topics because there are always people out there on the pursuit of fish. And so any new ways that we're doing that, we can't wait to share that.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So I don't know. We talked about having a show tonight, and we didn't really have that much to talk about, half hour's worth. But no, seriously, if you have any questions, we'll hang on for a little bit here, but we just wanted to kind of give you guys an update what we were up to. Like she said earlier, Matt Rowan will be on next week. We'll start, as the summer starts winding down, we'll start having more frequent our pro staff back on, and yeah, should be fun to catch up and see what everybody's been catching, because we've seen some good pictures, but we haven't really talked to anybody that much yet.
But we are always interested in where you're fishing and what that fishing looks like for you, because we love to kind of watch those trends across areas. So although this week and next week we are talking about Wisconsin, we are hoping to, kind of reach out across and bring you kind of more of that story, from all across the country, I guess, from wherever everyone's at. So looking forward to bringing you those reports.
Yeah. Daryl, you also have a safe and happy 4th. And I think, unless anybody has any last second questions, everybody else out there have a safe and happy 4th.
And with that, we'll see you on next week's edition of Hook, Line, and Striker.
Night, everybody.